Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Today we're going to make a simple bench in a boot tray. Right now we're renovating our mudroom / laundry room. We wanted a place where we could come in out of the snow, hang up our snow clothes, and then have a seat to take off our boots. So today we're going to make a super simple bench with a drip tray underneath it so you can dry your boots. Let's do it. The bench top is something I've already kind of got figured out. I've got this big slab of basswood, so I can just cut this down and clean it up. If you don't have a big slab like this though, you could laminate some 2x4s together to get a nice thick top. So we're gonna work on this a little bit, but really we're gonna put in the work on making the legs. I'm gonna cut this slab, and it's too thick to cut all the way through with one pass with the circular saw. So I'm gonna cut one side, then flip it over and do the other side. It's not flat yet, so it's not gonna be a clean cut. I'm gonna have to clean it up later, but using this track will help me at least get kind of a straight line. This piece is too big to fit through my planer, and so we don't have a good way to get it flat on both sides, and it's actually not in that bad shape. So I think we're just gonna spend the time to sand the outside of it and take advantage of the cup that's in the board to be the seat. So once we get it cleaned up on the outside, we'll make some flat spots on the bottom for the legs to go. Using the belt sander, I got most of the roughness off of here, and I want to leave some of the saw marks on it because I think it looks kind of cool, but I'm going to use an orbital sander just to get it smooth to the touch. Then we'll do the same thing on all the other sides. While I'm sanding, I wanted to remind you about our online store. We've got all sorts of stuff there, a whole bunch of new t-shirt designs, we've got digital plans for a bunch of the products, we've got the book that I wrote, and audio, and digital, and print. We've got a bunch of other stuff as well, like stickers and patches. It's a great way to support I Like to Make Stuff and show people that you like to make stuff too. Be sure to go check it out at ILikeToMakeStuff.com. So the outside surfaces got sanded pretty well, pretty quickly, but the ends are going to be a problem. Since I had to make those two cuts, there's kind of an uneven cut line down the middle, and so I'm going to sand from the end grain, which is typically pretty hard to do, to try to flatten this out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I just don't want any weird lines and overhangs. And this should be pretty easy to do even though it's end grain, because this is basswood. Basswood has a really tight grain, but it's very lightweight, sands really well, it's great for carving. After about an hour's worth of sanding, this thing's in pretty good shape. It's still got some character to it, but it is soft to the touch on all the sides. So this thing is ready for finish pretty much, so let's move on to the metalworking. The legs for this bench are going to be simple trapezoids. There's nothing difficult about it, but I did take it into Fusion and model it up. And this is so I could figure out how long each side needed to be and to make sure that it had the right angles. Usually I would cut something like this on the horizontal bandsaw because it's a nice clean cut, but I have to make a 49-degree angle. The max on that is 45, so we're going to do it by hand. I'm going to use this digital protractor. So I'm going to set this to 49 degrees and then lay it in place and draw a line. Now from that line I can use a bandsaw or a cutoff wheel on a grinder and make that cut. I've got this digital protractor set to 49 degrees, and I'm lining this edge up with this piece on the saw and then getting the fence to match the other side. And when we tighten that down, that should be 49 degrees. I changed the angle of the saw so that now it's only cutting at 8 degrees. The top of the legs is going to have a really shallow cut on it to meet the bottom of the bench. So these are the leg assemblies. We got the 49-degree angles down here that meet together, and then the 8-degree at the top, and that gives us a flat surface between the two parts of the legs. So now we're just going to hold these up on the welding table into place and tack all of the pieces together before doing the full welds. We got both the legs kind of welded up. I just need to grind them down so that they're smooth on the outside. And these are going to attach to the bottom of the bench with a plate that runs right across the top. So I've got some 2-inch steel, the same width as this. I'm going to cut a piece to fit the length of the entire assembly and then weld it on. I've got these pieces cut and they fit right on here perfectly, but if I weld them in place, I'm going to have a solid cavity in there with no vent. And I'm going to be putting a lot of heat on this as I weld it and grind it. So I'm going to drill some holes right here in the top just to let some of that heat out, just to be safe. I've got those holes drilled, but I'm going to put 2 more right here in the center so that we can drive screws up through them into the bench top. Even though the bottom side of this bench was not completely flat, both of the leg assemblies needed to sit parallel so that the bench wouldn't rock when you sat on it. So we put the slab on the CNC upside down and routed 2 parallel grooves in the bottom side. Using the CNC made sure that these were exactly the same depth relative to each other, but you could certainly do this with a router as well. The original plan was to paint these black, but actually we really like the raw steel, so we're just going to leave them like this, but we need to stop them from rusting. And to do that, we're just going to spray them down with a rust inhibitor. It's a clear coat and you won't even see it. We're going to put finish on the top of the bench. I'm going to fill in some of the cracks with some 5-minute epoxy. This is going to make it more comfortable to sit on, but also stop dirt from falling down in these cracks. If you use a longer curing epoxy, it will be more clear, but this will be a little bit yellow. That's going to be okay in this case because we're going to cover the whole thing with polyurethane, and that will tint the wood yellow just a little bit. While we're waiting for the epoxy to cure up on the top, we're going to go ahead and make a drip tray for underneath. Now, you can just buy a boot tray. It's a big rubber tray to slide in there. But the way that I made the legs on this, we can't actually put one of those in without it hanging out in front of the bench. So we're going to make a custom cedar tray that fits in there, and we'll just put a plastic liner on the inside of it. To make the cedar part, we're going to start with a 1x4 and cut it down to 1-inch strips. I got the 1x4 ripped down to 3 strips, 8 feet long. I also cut some 3-foot strips. I'm going to cut these to final length. These are going to be the front and the back. These are going to be cut into shorter segments to span between these. So we're just going to chop all these down on the chop saw and then stick them together. To find the spacing for these pieces, we laid all of these pieces of material out in a line and measured their total width. We got that subtracted from the total length of the entire thing, and then that difference we split between the number of gaps that we needed. So now we know that each one needs to be 0.78 apart, and so we're going to make a little spacer that we can drop in place and put the next piece in. The glue's all set up on this, so you could use this as is. Just put it on top of tile and it would work just fine. It would just leave some residue and dirt on the tile below. So we're gonna make a little tray to put underneath this, and since it's gonna be completely hidden, we're gonna use this coroplast. This is what they would use for a business sign or a political sign. We often use it to make molds, so we're gonna make a little box that would work for a mold, but it's gonna go under this. I've drawn a border around the outside of this that's a 1/2 inch. So now I can cut through these lines, but only halfway through. That'll separate one side of the material, and then I can fold it on the other side. In case you were curious, this is just a compressed air can, but Jimmy DiResta taught me that if you turn it upside down and spray it, it's super cold, so it's a good way to cool off hot glue very quickly. That was quick and easy to put together, and it fits in there perfectly. It is white, so depending on what your floor is, you may want to paint it or cover it to match the flooring so that it doesn't stand out. I'm not sure what flooring this is going on yet, so I'm going to leave it white, but we may end up spray painting it later on, we'll see. The epoxy is just a little bit tacky, so we're not going to sand it yet. Instead, we're going to flip it over and go ahead and put the legs on this thing. Overall, I am super happy with how this thing turned out, although it is quite a bit heavier than I expected. I'm really happy to use this big slab of wood because this is something that my grandfather got when he cut down a tree probably 30 years ago. So it's really cool to turn this into a piece of furniture. Like I mentioned before, if you don't have a big slab like this, you could always laminate together some 2x4s to make a big thick top, or just use a smaller piece. The boot tray was super easy to put together and only took about 2 1x4s, so that's a quick and easy project that you can do that would be really useful in just about every house. You'll be seeing this bench again really soon because it's made for our mudroom. We're renovating that room right now, and the video on it should be out in a few weeks. So that you don't miss that video, be sure to subscribe. And in the meantime, we've got a whole bunch of other project videos for you to check out, so click right there to watch some. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Hang up our snow clothes, sit down, and take off the boots. Take off the boots. They fit right on the top of here. Actually, that's the wrong one. Hey, I'm Bob, and I like to make... Dang it, I'm gonna say that weird. Hey, I'm Bob, and I like to make stuff.
Hey!
Hey!